How would you react if you had joined the military to serve alongside your brother and ended up losing him in a combat situation during a deployment to Afghanistan? If you were then driven to write down those memories of your brother in a book to preserve them for generations to come? What if the mission then shifted to talking with others within the veteran community about life situations they're dealing with or efforts they're involved in to help others? Would you answer the call when an organization dedicated to creating a memorial that honored the memories of those who fought and sacrificed in the longest conflict the United States has experienced asked for your help? Join me as I speak with Scott DeLuzio about his experience serving within the military and how he is continuing to answer the call and serve others within the veteran space. This is Veteran Success Story. Welcome to another episode of Veteran Success Story. Today, I'm joined with Scott DeLuzio, host of the Drive On podcast, author of the book Surviving Son, and ambassador for the Global War on Terror Memorial Foundation. Scott's work within the veteran community has been exemplary over the last few years, and matter of fact, his podcast is another one of the ones to where I would listen into from time to time in order to kind of glean some of my own insights and stuff, and I just found it really helpful along the way. I mean, with someone who has over 400 episodes in, Scott is definitely a pro at putting this stuff together. So that was really cool, really interesting, good to have him on the show. I also have a favor to ask of the audience out there, and if you guys could, do me a huge favor. Follow and subscribe. Whichever one, you can decide which episodes you listen to and whatnot, but what it does on my end is it helps me be able to keep this platform free and keep this content flowing to you with the different guests. It's not too much of an ask, other than also I ask that if you found something useful on the show or you find something through it, tell a friend, hey, check this show out. It's actually getting to the point to where it's not so bad to listen to, right? Anyway, guys, I'm gonna leave my intro rant in order to say, I hope you enjoy this episode, and without going any further into it, let's get straight into the full content. And thank you for joining me on yet another episode of Veteran Success Story. Welcome to another Veteran Success Story. Today I have, author, podcast host, and now advocate or ambassador for the Global War on Terror. What is it? A Memorial Foundation?
Yeah, Memorial Foundation. You got it. Yeah, I'm a fellow for the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation. So, yeah, I wear a few different hats, but
you've got some hats.
I think you covered some of them. Yeah.
Well, I know. Your book, what is it, The Surviving Son, about your brother, is kind of, that's where some of this started. Exactly. I know we were talking about this off camera beforehand, but that's kind of where this started. And then you grew into the podcast end of things. And I know that myself, seeing how many episodes and then like going through and watching your content and then seeing it, and I was like, man, this is a really good, the format of it, you had your stuff together and everything. I have to say, man, I know this is our second time meeting, but I was a little nervous coming on your show. I was. I mean, you provide
really?
This outlet, and I saw the potential on what you put into it. You can tell you're passionate about it. So, I mean, and that's for anybody listening, it's the Drive On podcast. So if you love Scott and everything that we talk about today, just tune on in over there because he's got his own thing going on. Is it every other week, Scott?
Actually, it's 2 episodes a week.
2 episodes a week.
Yeah, 2 episodes a week. So I started off nearly 6 years ago now. We're almost at that 6-year mark. And I was doing just 1 episode a week, and my backlog of episodes, I had I think in the can I had 5 months of episodes that, if I did nothing, the next 5 months were taken care of at that point. And I was like,
good place to be.
That's a long time. If you have a guest on your show and you record something, you're like, hey, yeah, by the way, we're going to be waiting nearly half a year before anyone gets to hear what we talked about. And sometimes it's like timely information that you might want to have, and like 5-6 months later, it's, I don't know, that it's kind of out of date at that point. And at that point, the enthusiasm, excitement, whatever from the guest, it kind of fades a little bit, and I found they weren't promoting the episode, they weren't sharing it with their social, because it's like, I forgot I even did this episode. You know, that type of attitude is what I was starting to notice with people. And I was like, okay, well, I have enough content here, obviously, because I have all this in the queue. I said, what if I scaled that back instead of 5 months? What if I did it like 2.5 months, and I just did 2 episodes a week? And so I just kind of moved everything up a bit, and I've been doing that for like the last 3 or 4 years now. And
Oh, wow.
I don't know. I haven't missed a week since I started with any of it, and I don't intend, like, right now I'm looking at my calendar. I'm getting to that point where I almost have too many episodes again, and I'm like, I don't see myself slowing down with it anytime soon. You know, it's just like you said, it's something that I have a passion for, helping out other veterans with their, you know, whatever their issues may be. And I know that's a broad thing to say, is, you know, just whatever your issues are, but you know, ultimately the show started when I got back from deployment. Guys that I served with, all, you know, everyone in my company came home from that deployment, which, you know, that's awesome. But we started losing guys when we got home, and I was like, what the hell is going on? We came from a place that everyone there, or not everyone, but a lot of people there wanted us dead. And we survived that. And we came home to a place where everybody wants us to thrive and you know, do great things. And that's when we start losing people. It just didn't compute with me. And so I said, okay, well, I can't just sit around waiting for another phone call saying another friend died. So that's where the podcast came from. Because I was like, some of these guys, I didn't even know what was going on. You know, there's some guys who, you know, you talk to people and they're like, yeah, we just talked to him last week, and he seemed like perfectly fine. There seemed like nothing was wrong. It didn't seem like he was, you know, down or depressed, or, you know, anything was wrong with the, you know, family life or anything like that. And it's like, just came out of the blue. So it's like, well, I mean, obviously we're guys, we don't talk about feelings and emotions. And it's, honestly, it was weird for me when I first started the podcast, because I was like, I was that old school mindset where it was just, I don't know, just fucking deal with it. And, you know, don't bother people about that. It's like, that's your problem, and just suck it up and deal with it. But I realized, like, very quickly, that's just not the way to deal with things. So, you know, I want to help spread that awareness to people and let people know, like, there are solutions out there that don't involve that permanent, you know, 22 a day solution. You know?
Oh yeah, and this long form format and the ability to do that, especially remotely these days, to be able to reach out and talk to someone that's either had the experience or has a different outlook on something. Right. And number one, I mean, what you're talking about here, at the very least, like, maybe have someone second guess, you know, talk them off that ledge.
Yeah.
You know, oh, there is a way forward here. I haven't thought about it that way before, but to be able to offer that and put that out there in the way that you do, and man, the intensity you do twice a week, that's for people that are out there that don't understand content creation in that way and in the way that you do it there, because it's polished. Your show is great, man. It really is.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
No, it was one of the ones that drew me to it, to where in the beginning, when I first started doing the book tour that I was doing, I looked at everyone that I was going on to and everything, and yours was one of that, like, okay, I'm nervous to go on here. I need some practice before I get on there. And I know, meeting you though, you're just so laid back on that end. You're kind of this host where I was like, oh, what was I nervous about? Like, why was I? You know, we're just talking. We're just two guys talking, and it's cool that you took that end of things, and you're another veteran out there doing this, because there's not a lot of them out there doing it, whether it's imposter syndrome or the fear to take that leap out into it. So kudos to you, man, because it's a great show, you know, and I love what you're doing out there.
Yeah,
I really do.
Yeah, and with that, like, for other people out there who see what I'm doing, see what you're doing, see what other people are doing, like, if that is the spark that gets them into doing their own thing, even if it's very similar, like you said, there may not be a ton of people out there doing it. And I know there are some people out there who are doing it, but if there's somebody else out there who has that itch and is like, maybe I can do it differently or better than what these other guys are doing, do it, please. I really hope that there is more people, more competition out there. And I say competition loosely because I don't see it as competition, because if you have a show and you are reaching somebody and you keep that person here to wake up again tomorrow, then mission accomplished. And
when you drive,
that's all I care about.
That's the thing is, let's say, you have your show and I mean, any of the others out there, there's others, but you look at that and you just go, oh, wow, I really like the way that they did that. That was pretty cool. I never thought about that way. Let's explore that, or maybe we should be presenting something. And it's through those type of things that it's not copying per se, but you're putting your own spin onto it, and you push each other, and that's kind of how we do that in the, at least how my old unit did it and stuff in the military community and everything. I'm like, man, like, how did you? And a lot of them, they just stick together. And if you ask, they'll rise to the occasion and be like, yeah, you're not going to like it, but here's how I got through it. And maybe you figure out a different way and you go back to them and you say, hey, you know what? I tried your advice and it's great and it got me there. But however, I did something different and tweaked it along the way in the process. Have you ever tried it this way? And it's possible, you through each other unlock those keys.
Yeah. And that happens too. And just strange that you brought it up the way that you just did, because this morning I was at the gym, I was listening to a podcast, and I listen to, like, when I listen to podcasts, I listen to like all sorts of different ones just because for that purpose, I want to like branch out of my bubble. Like, I don't just listen to other military podcasters and, things like that. I want to kind of branch out. And so I was listening to Mike Rowe has a podcast, and he had Tim Allen, from like Home Improvement, like back in the day. He had him on the podcast, and they started getting to this like philosophical discussion about things, about like, I don't know, like what the meaning of life is and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, at first I was like, where the hell are they going with this? Right. But then it like got me thinking, and I was like, what are you doing to me? What kind of sorcery is this that you're getting me to start thinking this way about like something different? And they totally pulled me in, and it got me thinking, and the wheels started spinning, and I was like, man, I need to do an episode on something like this. Could I get Tim Allen on my podcast? Can I, the wheel just started spinning, but it's just crazy how that works. And sometimes it's just that one little spark. I mean, I've been in a therapy session before where it was just the way that the therapist worded something, and she could have worded it 1,000 different ways. Just that one particular way in that one day that she worded something, the light bulb went on, and I was like, holy shit, something like it clicked for me. And it was one of those things I was just grappling with and struggling with forever. And sometimes that's all it takes. I don't know.
That perspective. I mean, therapy is great for that. I know there's some guys out there that balk at going to therapy or opening up to someone about it. And it's like, dude, you don't see that other person anywhere outside of there, but to be able to get that outside perspective and, on top of it too, a lot of times well, not a lot of times, but the VA is paying for it for, veterans out there or military spouses and stuff. You might have to go through a few extra hoops and stuff to get it, but it's invaluable. It's good stuff.
It is. Yeah.
But Scott, let's back it all up. Let's back it up to
sure
to how we got here, how we got to the point where you're at. And you've since moved. You grew up in Connecticut, which is my old stomping grounds. Actually, I grew up in Litchfield County. So I
was in Glastonbury for good bulk of my upbringing, and lived there before moving out here where I am now in Arizona.
What drew you? Because really, in the military, I think I've met two other people, and one was right down the road from me, which is crazy. He ended up as one of the medics for the other platoons. But then, the other one, I think it was just somebody somebody from basic training, where it was like, yeah, I'm from Bridgeport. And that's the only two people I ever met from in Connecticut. And it's like, oh, yeah, okay, there's nobody from Connecticut ever joins the military. But what made you decide to join up?
Yeah, so First off, there are a bunch of people in Connecticut who are in the military. I know this because I served in the Connecticut Army National Guard, and so without that, you're kind of shit out of luck with people if you if you don't have people from Connecticut in the military. But so actually, my brother, my younger brother Stephen, he was going to school up in Vermont at Norwich University, which is where the ROTC got started, got founded, or whatever, and he was going to college up there. Long story short, he was up there. Just he had some academic issues at his other school, and he was like, "I need some military discipline to get me through this." And so, what better place than the school like that, right? And so he goes through, and he meets a guy up there who was in the Vermont Guard, and starts planting little seeds in my brother's ear about hey, maybe the Guard's right for you, and I'm sure there was some recruiting incentives and things like that about it too. But my brother's like, can I go check it out? Can I go to a drill weekend with you or something? Just check it out. And I guess he did, and he got hooked, and he ended up joining while he was going to college. And I had for the longest time wanted to join the military. I never did. I grew up watching movies like Top Gun and things like that, and that was just super cool. And growing up, we looked at first responders, military people like that as those were our superheroes versus other people had Michael Jordan and people like that who were like that's the people they looked up to. I went to a homecoming after Desert Storm, like at a Air Force base near us, watching those guys come off the plane. I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. These guys coming, they're actual combat veterans. And
did you ever get the trading cards?
We had.
Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where they had
I know exactly
trading cards and stuff.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And all that stuff, looking back at it now as an adult and being a little more cynical, like it was a lot of probably propaganda stuff that they're trying to just get the country, rallying behind the troops and everything like that. Not that it's a bad thing, but it is what it is. But so 9/11 happens. I'm in college. I'm at the point where I'm ready to just drop out of college and join the military. But I decided, I'm going to stick with college. I'll finish it out, and then if there's still a war going on, I'll join then. Well, then my brother joined, so he joined like the year after I graduated college, or the same year, later that year, and then the year following, I started hearing these reports in the news that the military was struggling to meet their recruiting numbers, and I was like, where are all these people who after 9/11 wanted to go kick some ass and stuff? And I was like, wait, I was one of those guys, and I still haven't done anything about it. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm young enough, I'm fit enough. I wasn't like in great shape, but I was like, the Army can figure that out. They'll sort me out. And I was like, well, why not me? So that's how I ended up in the military. Is really 9/11 I think was the push. But then my brother kind of showing me the way, like showing like what he did and how he went through, and he went infantry, so of course I went infantry.
I was going to ask, what drew you to the infantry?
Yeah, that was him. Because we had that kind of like we kind of butt heads with things like that, like where if I went some admin role or something like that, he'd be like, "You fucking pogue,"
Of course.
and I was like, "There's no way I'm going to let him do that," right? So yeah. I was like, we at least have to be at the same job level, and I didn't want to. I also didn't want to, do anything extra than him. Like I already had my college degree. I could have become an officer at that point. I didn't want to, because I didn't want to like take away from his service and what he did. I didn't want him to be like, I have to salute you now and all this stuff. Like, I don't give a shit about any of that stuff. Like, I wanted to serve because I wanted to serve, and I didn't want to take away. Like, I was proud of him for joining. Like, take some balls to do, and I was very proud of him. And I don't want to do anything that might show like, hey, I'm better than you, or I'm something like that. Like, none of that stuff mattered to me. So I just wanted to keep us even. And actually we got promoted at the same time, like pretty much within like a month of each other. Like, we were getting promoted all the way through. We both were sergeants at the end, and like, it was just strange how that worked out, but it worked out. So
then you find yourself Afghanistan, right?
Yeah, that was
And when is
2010.
this? 2010.
Yeah,
Yep.
2010 we got there. Like late 20, 2009 we were, uh, probably like October, November time frame. We were training up.
Were you guys part of the surge, like Kandahar surge time?
We weren't in Kandahar, but there was a big surge
There was.
around that time. The deployment I was on was the brigade. It was a brigade. Yeah, excuse me, brigade wide deployment,
Mhm.
um, and that happened to include my brother's battalion and my battalion. We were all included in that, and I think in total it was somewhere like around 5,000 troops
Oh,
that were deployed. I think it was one of the largest deployments of National Guard soldiers since World War II.
I was gonna say
Um,
that's a fairly large size for a National Guard deployment. That's
yeah,
huge.
because it was like pretty much most of the Vermont Army National Guard. It was, I think there was units in Maine too, or Massachusetts, somewhere around there. It was a huge chunk of the Northeast
Yeah.
um, was being deployed during that deployment. So, um, and of course I was in Connecticut, so there's a lot of troops being deployed,
Mhm.
all at the same time, and so. Of course, he and I were both deployed at the same time. That was kind of a struggle for my family because it's like, oh, both of you guys are going at the same time. Like,
Oh yeah.
one is hard, two, what the hell, like, but as I came to kind of learn over the years, like it's not normal for brothers or siblings to be deployed at the same time. Like if you were in the 101st and somebody else was in the 82nd, like a brother or something like that,
Yep.
you likely weren't getting deployed at the same time.
We actually had, and it was the strangest thing. We had two brothers in the same company,
Uh-huh.
ended up on the same deployment, and at one point, the commander, they were in the same platoon, and the commander was like, like that
Yeah,
is,
right.
we're getting to the point to where they separated them for that very reason.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not in active duty army. It's not as common. Obviously, things like that will happen, but we're just that's just the way the cards fall. But in National Guard, when you think about it, they're state level military units, and
Yeah.
so chances are, if I join and my brother joins, we're going to be in the same unit. And our company had several sets of brothers that were in the same company. I think they were all separated by different platoons at least, but
Mm.
they're in the same company. We're on the same base, and there's at least two. There might have been three sets of brothers if I'm just not remembering correctly now. But um, and so there was, I mean, we're on the same base, and that base gets hit. I mean, I mean, well,
Exactly. No, that's yeah, it's
But
the proximity wise and stuff like that, and the effect that it can have on the family, and
mhm.
really, like, I mean, in moving forward too. Really, honestly, we can go into it. It's what ended up happening to you guys and your
Yeah,
family, and
yeah,
that's
exactly.
do you want? I know it's. Do you want to go into it? Because I know
Sure, yeah,
your book is about that end of things, and it's
yeah. So to what you're getting at here is, my brother, partway through that deployment, he was out on a mission and ended up being killed in action, and so that was that was tough, in and of itself. When you lose a loved one, I don't care if it's in combat or car accident or cancer, I don't care what it is. That's a tough situation, right? But
yeah,
when it's unexpected, he was 25 years old. You don't expect a 25-year-old to die. I don't, and as I know, as stupid as this sounds, he was an infantryman
mm,
in combat situation. I didn't even cross my mind that anything bad would happen to him while we were over there. That
yeah,
was just the furthest thing from my mind at that point. And I don't know if that's some like protective mechanism that I did to myself, just like mind games, like, that's just stuff that happens to other people. Maybe that was what I was doing because I just, it never occurred to me that he could be seriously injured or killed. Bumps and bruises, yeah, sure. I mean, he played hockey in high school. Like I knew bumps and bruises, I knew broken bones, like those kind of things. That's nothing. He can handle that. But like serious injuries, like amputation or death or anything like that, didn't even come on my radar.
yeah.
Um, until it did, until my CO pulled me aside. I was out on a mission when I found out, and he pulled me aside and told me that my brother's unit, he was out on a patrol, he got ambushed, and that he got hit. And I was like, still in that mindset of like he couldn't be killed. And I was like, oh, okay, well, kind of almost like matter of fact, like how do I get to him so I can be there, for moral support, or does he need blood, or whatever it is that I can do. Like,
Yeah.
let me get there.
And it just didn't register.
No, he looked at me like I was crazy, and maybe I was at that point. Maybe it just was just such a shock to the system. He's like, I don't think you heard me. I think he's been killed. And that was like everything in me just, oh my God, it felt like the wind got knocked out of me. Like someone just punched me in the gut.
Yeah.
And I've said this before on other shows, like when I've kind of described this, but you hear about people who have near-death experiences when their life flashes before their eyes, like, their childhood and all this stuff, their first, whatever, I don't know, riding a bike and all these things. My life flashed forward, and I started envisioning my life without him in it. And all the things like that we wouldn't experience, wouldn't get to see him get married or have kids, or see my kids play with his kids, or all the holidays and all the family gatherings and all those things. I was just envisioning them just being empty, because he was such this big presence. He filled the room when he walked in. It was like everybody. It was almost like the old like Cheers episodes when Norm walked in and everyone like stops what they're doing, like, "Hey, Norm," like it was like that with him. It was like he walked in the door and it was just like this big presence that was there. And how do you fill that? What do you fill that with? And that's kind of where my mind went, like in the moments after finding out that he was killed. It was literally probably no more than 10 seconds, and I just saw that flash forward, and I was like, how do we even deal with this? Like I didn't think I'd have to deal with not having a brother ever, because he was younger than me, and I'm supposed to die first. Like that's just the natural order of things. And if I did have to deal with it, I'd be 85 years old, and whatever. But like I'll deal with it then. But at the time, I was 28, and it's like, this isn't time. I still got 60 some odd years left, like before I have to deal with this shit. And to make matters worse, after finding out, I think it was maybe 20 minutes or so. I don't remember the exact time frame, but it felt like a short amount of time. Probably 20 minutes or so after finding out that he was killed, our unit started taking fire from the village that we had just come out of. And so I had to do something with all that grieving, all that emotion and sadness and everything. And because I still had guys I had to lead. I was a sergeant. I was a squad leader at that point. I had a squad that I had to lead. They were expecting stuff from me, but at the same time, I felt nothing but rage, like homicidal rage. Like I wanted to just go kill people.
Yeah.
Which they gave us that opportunity, because they were like, "Hey, come shoot me. I'm the bad guy," And so like I was like, I wanted people to start shooting at me to give me a reason to just. I wanted to go run down in the village and kill everybody in the village. I didn't care if it was man, woman, or child. Like that's that craziness. Type
of, that you hear about it in other books, or they refer to it in movies, like that Vietnam where they raised the villages and stuff, and it's like, no, you don't understand. You're like, how could someone do that? But then you have a friend of yours killed in combat, that you were next to and stuff, and it happens. You get that anger and that rage, and
the only thing keeping me honestly from going off the deep end and doing all that, which I look back now and I'm like, thank God I didn't do that, because that would be awful. That would be, I don't know how I'd live with that, with myself, or live with all that now. In that moment though, I absolutely wanted to do it, but the only thing that kept me from doing it is like, look, if I go and do that, slim to none chance I'm making it out of there alive. And then my parents get a second knock on the door. My wife becomes a widow. My son doesn't have a father. I was like, I got people that I need to be there for. And my squad, the rest of my guys, like if I go and do that, they're probably going to either follow me or have to at least come retrieve my lifeless body. And
Yeah.
that puts them in harm's way, and I got them to worry about too. And by some stroke of luck, I make it out alive and one of them doesn't. How do I look their family in the eye and say, oh geez, yeah, I lost it a little bit because I was sad and angry and all this stuff, and that's why your loved one isn't here. And
Yeah.
I don't know how I had that moment of clarity where all of that came to me. Like it was just like, just take a deep breath. Yeah, this sucks, but put that shit aside and go do your job. Go make sure your guys are squared away. They got the ammo they need. They got all the, whatever they need. The direct their fire, do all the things that you're supposed to do as a leader. And I tried my best. I'm sure it wasn't great. It was probably not my shining moment. I probably wouldn't have passed if we were still,
But to take that the disciplines and stuff that have been instilled and your duties as a sergeant, and to be like, you know what, like I want to give in to this animalistic rage here.
Yeah.
But I can't. And to recognize that and say, hey, no, you have a job to do. You're an American soldier, and this is what needs to be done right now.
Yeah.
Dealing with it later, I mean, in that instance, and stuff, is definitely the more healthy thing to do than go full crazy. But at the same time, I mean, after that engagement or that point there, later on, you found yourself doing the ramp ceremony, and ended up sitting beside him in the plane, if I'm correct here. Yeah. So, I mean, that right there must have been rough.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the ramp ceremony, I didn't know what to expect because I knew of ramp ceremonies, but I had never experienced one. And so the first one that I ever experienced was, surprise, here's your brother. And it was, the only way I can really describe it is like if you ever went to a wake, before a funeral or something like that. It's similar to that. Yeah. Where I was kind of like went up, paid my respects to my brother, and there's another soldier, Tristan Southworth, who was killed as well, and paid my respects to both of them, and then kind of got off the plane, and we were at Bagram, and anyone who's ever been to Afghanistan, been to Bagram, there's a ton of people there, and it's a lot of the higher ups and stuff, and there was so much brass walking by. In a way, it was a little bit therapeutic, saying like, hey, these guys actually do give a shit about what happens. Like, they took time out of their day to come to this soldier who they didn't know from a hole in the wall. Generals, we had foreign military as well. There were Polish soldiers that were coming through, and there were, there's maybe German or Italian, I forget. There's a couple others that came through as well, and civilian contractors came through and paid their respects. And like, to me, that meant a lot. It was like those people took time. They could have just looked at the plane and be like, oh, that sucks for that guy, and walked away and went on with their day. But they took time out of the day. They went through and paid their respects, not only to them, but they offered their condolences to me, and that meant a lot to me. So in a way, it was semi like therapeutic. It was a shock too, but it was also kind of therapeutic a bit. But flying out of Afghanistan was kind of a challenge. I wanted to escort my brother's body the entire way home. They didn't let me do that. But, as a soldier, you never leave a fallen soldier behind. And not only was this a fallen soldier, it was my brother. And I was like, no, there's no way I'm leaving him. And they said, don't worry, you'll never be alone. Like, someone will always be, there, standing guard or whatever. And so I'm like, fine. But I don't like it, but fine. They did let me go on the same plane out of Afghanistan as he was on, and I did get that seat, basically the closest seat to him. And I was just, honestly, I was being Big Brother, and I was just staring at that box that he was in, the transfer case, and I was just staring at it. And if anyone so much as like sneezed nearby, I still had that rage in me, and I would probably beaten the shit out of him. Thank God nobody did because I don't want to think about like where I would have gone in that moment because I was still so angry. Um, and I needed a place to put that anger. And I was looking at everybody on that plane, even though they're all Americans, they're all, either soldiers or Marines or whatever. They're going home on leave and everything. And I still looked at them like I don't care. I'll still beat the shit out of anybody if they come near him. But like I said, thankfully no one did. But yeah, then we ended up parting ways in Kuwait. And he went off to, I don't know exactly wherever they bring him off to, but, and then I was on my way home. But up until that point, I had not been able to speak with anyone at home, any of my family, my wife or my parents or anything like that, because, the military still hadn't given notification to my parents. And so they didn't, and it was either they hadn't given notification or we didn't get the confirmation that the notification had been given. And so they were just like, no, you can't call home. And it wasn't until I landed in Kuwait about a day later that I found out that, yes, they had been notified. And yes, you can call home. And of course, I had no calling cards. I didn't have my, that prepaid phone that everyone gets, when you go over there. I didn't have any of that stuff with me. And people at the travel center or whatever, they were throwing calling cards at me. They're like, just use them, go for it, man. And so I called my wife, saw where she was and what she was up to. I called my parents. I didn't have a ton of time on these calling cards, but and I also didn't have a ton of time because they actually got me on like the next flight out of there. So I was just getting ready to go, but it was just like, what do you even say? Like I guess the only thing I could do was just reassure them because I'm sure they were worried about like where I was and am I safe? I'm like, yeah, I'm on my way home. I'm in a safe place. I still had a sound enough mind, I think, that I was still keeping OPSEC in mind, and I was like, I didn't even want to tell him where I was. I was just like, yeah, I'm safe, and I'm on my way home. And
but
I'll
that's
see
even like those loss of words right there. I mean, what do you say in that type of situation where I'm sure your emotions are already, you're experiencing this rage and you're kind of finding this place within there. But then how do you express that empathy or tenderness, and you have family on there, you don't want to snap on them, but here you are experiencing this. And that is something that, to unpack, most people never even get to, have to go through that trial and stuff. And here you were right in the thick of it.
Yeah. And honestly, some of it too was, I don't know what the right word is, but like I failed. Like I was a big brother. That's what big brothers do. They take care of their little brother and they protect them. And, growing up, that's, if there's a bully on the playground or something like that, well, I'm going to go fuck them up because that's what big brothers do. And, but then here I am and I have my brother's dead. And, what in my head, I started blaming myself. Like what could I have done differently?
Did you feel responsible?
Yeah. Of course. Because it doesn't matter. Yeah, sure, he was an adult and he can make his own choices, but so could I. And I joined after he did. So it was very easy for me to say, well, why can't I join the same unit that he's in and be with him and all that? And I don't know that would have made a difference because we probably wouldn't have been in the same platoon even, or maybe even in the same company. We would have been, possibly in different places, but I could have tried, and so that's like where my mind went to. And so when you, when someone loses a loved one, the common response is like, I'm sorry for your loss. But, it's a different kind of sorry because in this case, I really was sorry that I screwed up. I didn't do all that I could do. And that was my mindset. And I understand now after years of therapy that that's not the right way to think of it. But honestly, that's how I felt.
What made you decide to write the book? Was that kind of part of the therapy end of things for you, or is that how you set it off to start on that end, or you were just like, I need to write about this and encapsulate it?
I started writing basically as soon as I got home from Afghanistan, and it wasn't like a therapeutic thing. It was mostly because I knew at some point I had a son. He was young, like 9 months or so at that time.
Yeah.
I was like, at some point he's going to grow up and he's going to have questions. What did you do in the war? What happened to my uncle? Those types of questions. And I also knew that with the amount of emotional baggage that I was carrying around here and all the things that were going on, that my memory is going to probably play tricks on me. I'm going to remember things differently than they may have occurred. And so I started writing them down as close to that moment that they happened as possible so that I wouldn't forget. And it was just notes. It was not structured as a book or any kind of format like that. It was just people, place, things, all the stuff that happened.
So you're just journaling.
Basically, yeah.
At the time, yeah.
At that time, it was kind of just a journal, and I don't know if it was even therapeutic. It was just, for me, more factual. I want to make sure that I don't forget these facts.
Mm-hmm.
And so then years later, like right around the time that I started the podcast, so I had journaled, the facts were locked away, and I kind of just forgot about it. But around the time I started the podcast, I was like, you know what? This is more than just notes that are all disorganized and stuff that probably will never see the light of day. This story, I think, should be told, and not necessarily for me for any notoriety or fame or fortune or anything like that, because anyone who writes a book, unless you're Stephen King, like, you're not making a fortune writing any kind of books.
Not.
Right?
Definitely not.
And I knew that, but for the same reason that I started writing these notes, my kids were starting to get older. I have 3 kids now, and I was like, at some point they're going to probably start having some questions, and what did you do in the war, and how did whatever, and maybe someday they're going to be blessed with kids, and they'll have questions too. Like I have questions about what my grandfather did in World War II. He passed away, so I can't ask him, but how great would it be if there was a book that he left behind, or even notes or something that he left behind that I could take and read, and now I can know what happened. And so honestly, that was my target audience, was my kids, for this book. And as I'm writing the book, I'm realizing that it's these 2 soldiers who go off to war, and it's our points of view of what happened during this war. It's a part of history. I mean, you never think about history like as you're in a moment of something, but you're part of history that could be in a history book at some point, depending on how interesting it is. And at the time, you never really think much of it, but I was like, you know what, this is part of it. And how many countless stories have we lost just due to time, because those World War II veterans who just passed away recently, they never wrote their story down, or never told it to anyone, or recorded it, or anything like that. It's gone.
Yeah.
And so it existed in their mind, and once in their mind is gone, it's gone. And I was like, that would kind of suck if my story, my brother's story especially, because I know his time is up and he can't tell his story anymore. So I'm going to do whatever I can to try to tell a piece of that story. Anyways, I'm not going to get all of it, obviously, but I'm going to try to tell a piece of the story. And then I'm going to tell my story, and all the things that we talked about were just pieces of the book and what I cover in the book. But I did it in a way that people who read it can kind of understand where we came from. As I talk about our upbringing and things that we did as kids, and how our mindset was getting into the military. And by the end of the book, when I talk about my brother passing away, my hope is that the reader will kind of have known him a little bit, and feel like feel a little bit of that loss. I'm not out to be like sadistic and try to make people purposely tortured or anything like that. But, you know, it's a sad story, and
Yeah.
I want to give the reader that sense that, hey, there is this sadness, and it is a real person. It's, you know, when you hear these statistics in the news that, you know, X amount of people were killed, and, you know, even in a plane crash, oh, there's 127 people who were killed in a plane crash or something. It's like they're all faceless people to you until they're
you
not.
don't see that end until it's happening to you.
So I wanted to put some, I guess, humanity to the story, and put a personality to the name, and to that one statistic, that one day that there were those soldiers who were killed in Afghanistan, that maybe somebody was sitting there getting ready for, you know, making dinner or something. They had the television on and they heard a story in the news that 2 soldiers were killed in Afghanistan. And then they think nothing of it after that. Well, those 2 soldiers had names, and they had families, and they had interests and passions and aspirations for the future. And I wanted to kind of kill that mindset of, oh, it just happens to other people, because those other people are somebody else's other people. And like they're he was my people. And, you know, I wanted to kind of paint that picture, I suppose.
It's a beautiful thing. And I mean, really, it's a lot of the reason why, you know, we do that sort of thing. You know, with a type of book, you're building a purpose into it, you know, and as well as memorializing. And it's, once those names aren't being said anymore, you know, is that person forgotten? So to be able to solidify that into, you know, a publication form like that, be able to continue on those stories among, you know, generational, really, your kids, and then their kids after that. Those names are in there, and it's history. Did anybody help you along the way?
Yeah, I got a lot of help, actually, from my family. They were huge help. My parents, my wife, they not just with like editing, like, you know, because if any of my English teachers from high school knew I wrote a book, they'd probably have a heart attack, because like, I was not the best English teacher, but so I needed help there, so that was obvious. But they helped, by they went through and they reminded me of, oh, hey, you didn't talk about this, you know, event that took place, and, you know, was there a reason that you're not talking about that? And it's like, no, a lot of it is because I forgot about it. And you know, no, but absolutely, yeah, it's a good idea. And then, you know, sometimes I didn't always take their advice and everything, because it just didn't feel like it jived with the story I was trying to tell. But one of the biggest pieces, and these guys didn't even know that they were helping with it, but the guys that served with my brother, they all wrote their sworn statements that happened after the incident where my brother was killed, and we were able to get a copy of those. And so there's like 25 or so, give or take, sworn statements that all described the incident surrounding my brother's death and the other soldier, Tristan's death. And so I read through all of those, and my gosh, is that a wild ride, to hear, like, straight from the people who were there, all the events of that day and everything that took place, and from different perspectives. You know, you got one person who was maybe, you know, behind and to the left a little bit, and another person who was, you know, next to him on the right, and, you know, someone else, some other location, and their perspectives on what they saw, what they heard, what they did, all these things that took place, were just so interesting to see all of them. But then I was challenged, because I had to piece all of this together and take all of those perspectives. And you know, like, you watch like cop shows or whatever, and the cops go and interview witnesses, and they get like 4 different witnesses that get 4 different stories about what happened during the bank robbery or whatever. It's like, well, I got 25 people all experienced the same situation, but I got 25 different perspectives. So what the hell actually happened? So I had to try to piece it together. And the way you do that is you kind of look for little commonalities in the stories. It's like, okay, well, if 2 or 3 people got this same piece of the story right, that's probably what happened, you know. And so you go with that, and you take that piece, and then you go find something else, and you piece all of these things together. And not to say that any of the stuff was a lie or untrue, but maybe you just didn't see everything. Maybe you didn't hear, or the thing that you did hear could have been something different than what actually happened. You know, maybe you heard the crack of a gun, but it was really a tree branch or something like that. I don't know, whatever. But there's just the way people hear it could be different than reality. So I try to piece all those things together and come up with the detail as best as I can. And so I write about that incident in the book based off of my summarization of those sworn statements and doing the best I could to get them as accurately as possible, incorporated into that book. Because I didn't feel like it did it justice just to say he died, the end, and then like wrap it up at that point. Like, how did he die? What happened? Because there were some heroics that took place that I don't want to diminish, during the firefight that ensued that ultimately took my brother's life. And the other soldier that I was talking about, he died trying to get my brother's body out of that situation. And so, that's pretty, in my mind, pretty heroic. And it felt like I'd be doing the whole story a big disservice if I didn't talk about that as well.
Yeah,
I know
just the abbreviated version, that news clipping article or that obituary, that is just that 2 sentences of
right,
and then the end.
And then it becomes that news story that you hear when you're cooking dinner, and you forget about it. It doesn't have any real impact. And I know I started this saying that my target audience was my kids, and at the time they were, I don't know, well, they're still young. I mean, my oldest is 15 right now, so they're still young, and is that the most appropriate thing for a young kid to be reading about? No, probably not. But I didn't give it to him right away either. So it was more like I'm not going to go traumatize a 5-year-old because that's a shitty thing to do. So
I was gonna say, I've got a 9-year-old daughter, and she's asked before, hey, can I get into? And I'm like, you can, just not yet.
Right.
I don't mind, but not yet.
Yeah. Be a kid for a little bit, innocent, and not have to worry about this stuff. But there'll be a time, and that's what I wanted to do too, is get that down, because if my brother's story taught me anything, is that tomorrow is not guaranteed to anybody. As a matter of fact, the rest of today is not guaranteed to anybody. And so, if I go and not write this story, and I'm like, oh, you know what, I'll do it next year. I'm too busy right now. Let me do it next year or the next year. I keep kicking the can down the road. That story's just going to not be told. And so I wanted to write it. I knew my kids weren't going to read it right away, and eventually I have given them copies of the book that they could read. My daughter, she's a voracious reader. She reads anything she get her hands on. So I knew that was read in like no time. But I had to wait. But I also didn't want to not write the story, because I know this book will be here long after I'm gone too, and so somebody will still be able to read it.
It's a beautiful thing you did there, man, and that really is those purposes that we build in behind doing something like that. Is that's really when you're wrapped up into it and you're passionate about something. You said in the beginning there, you don't write a book to make money unless you're someone like Stephen King or something, and they have the laundry list series of stuff, and that's great and all, but something like this, it's done for a reason. It's done for a purpose, and it's personal to you, and it really is. It's a beautiful thing that you did there.
Yeah.
So coming off of that, the podcast, I mean, was that kind of just like you were searching in between there, and you're writing and doing the podcast simultaneously?
Yeah, I was kind of doing it simultaneously. I think I started writing the book. I mean, I'll say before I started the podcast, but we're talking maybe weeks or months, like a couple months maybe beforehand, right around the same time for all intents and purposes. But I started the podcast because I like I said before, I wanted to help people who might be struggling.
Yeah.
And then I wrote the book, for the reasons I just talked about, and they kind of overlapped as far as the types of content that we were talking about. It was just kind of like a happy coincidence that it worked out that way. But, you know, I don't think any of the listeners of my podcast would not enjoy reading a book like this. I mean, you could just be that type of person who doesn't enjoy reading, and fine, you're probably not going to enjoy reading my book because you don't enjoy reading, period. So that's fine. But that's why I have an audiobook too.
Exactly.
You can listen to it.
It's crazy to see the difference. Audiobooks sell like hotcakes these days comparatively. Like that market is definitely shifting.
Yeah, I've noticed that too, where I don't know if you have done an audiobook or been a part of any of that, but it like when I started, I was like, oh, I do a podcast. I can talk and just talk into a microphone and read my book. And I didn't realize how freaking hard it is to do that because as you're reading, so I basically had a screen like I'm looking at right now, and I had my microphone here, and I'm recording it, and I get to the end of a line and my head fills in a word that I'm like, oh yeah, that's the word I used. And I get to the next line, I'm like, shit, that's not the word I used. And so I had to edit so many times of me reading the wrong word and then saying, whatever swear word that came to mind at the time. I was like, so frustrated and pissed off at myself, but it is what it is. It worked. It ended up working out okay. I got some good feedback.
You're in the 400s right now, right?
Yeah, I'm approaching 500 pretty soon here. So I'm like I recorded anyways, like 480 something, I think. And, so I'll be at the 500 mark pretty soon. So I have, let's see, 400, I've recorded 491, episodes. So,
that is a healthy bit.
It is. It's a big chunk. And I started looking at like other podcasters, like the bigger names like Jocko and, other people like that. I was like, how many do they have? Am I approaching them, or are they, because they don't all release like every week or whatever. They kind of just release, like, I'm going to record an episode and then I'll release it and put it out whenever. And I'm like, I may surpass some of these people soon, and I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I should be a bigger name than if I'm putting all this effort in. But I'm not concerned about that. But
no, I was going to say any of this stuff. It's honestly, when I started mine, it was about connecting, with other people out there about some of our problems. It seemed like whenever I sat down and talked with someone or gave someone a call or somebody called me, either, they were facing a problem to where I could give some insight in, or like when we touched base, it found out that either I was going through something that they had been through and could offer some advice. And eventually this ended up in a group Zoom chat. And then it was sort of just like that realization of, we're so much stronger together through this. And those barriers have been dropped because of, our commonality in the military, whether it's that the gallows humor that we all have, because you see that stuff out there. I was just talking with somebody, the guy who runs Security Halt podcast, and I'm like, man, some of the stuff you put out there is pretty wild. He's like,
right.
Yeah, I know, right. But it's, does it not? You noticed it, and I was like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, in a way, it's like, I love it, but you kind of, it's like that guilty pleasure almost. Like you don't want to admit that you love it, but you do, and but it's almost like therapeutic. I've heard from guests that I've had on the show who they come on the show and they're telling their story and everything, and like I'm doing now, I'm telling my story, and when you get it out there, and you're chatting with another veteran, like you said at the beginning of this episode, we've only talked a couple times, we've never met in person, but we can have a conversation like two veterans, and you get where I'm coming from, I get where you're coming from, and it's kind of in a way, it's like a therapeutic thing. And so I think, having these opportunities where there are, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's not, maybe it's just a group of people who get together and, sit around a campfire, go fishing, or they just are together and they can chat and talk and do whatever. Like, I think that whether you serve together or not, doesn't matter. Maybe it's great if you can reconnect with those people, but I know a lot of times people move off to different parts of the country and it's not always possible. But, that in and of itself could be sort of therapeutic.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so,
forming these micro communities, like you're saying here in a society to where we've sort of backed off of that end. We've become more and more isolated as a society, and when you remove those technical or that technology and those distractions, and you throw a squad or a platoon of guys out into no man's land where you're getting shot at or blown up, you get to know each other real fast, and those barriers just drop.
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, you find yourself. How did you what happened here with the Global War on Terror Memorial
Right.
Foundation here? Because
Yeah. So
I know that's something that's a new development for you.
that is a new development, and I'm pretty excited about that. So I was at the Military Influencer Conference back in, I think it was October of 2024, and I met some of the people who are in charge of the foundation, the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation, and they were just the coolest people. I just got to talk to them. Rod, the founder of
Yep.
the organization, um, I knew he was a big deal. Like, I didn't really know him before the event, but
Mm-hmm.
he was up there on stage speaking in front of I don't know how many thousands of people were there, and people took time out of their day to come hear what he had to say. So I knew he was kind of a big deal. And I saw him there one day. He was just standing by himself. I don't know, he was checking his messages on his phone or something like that. And I was like, what the hell? I'll just go up and introduce myself. And so we started chatting, and we had a awesome conversation. He's a super awesome guy. And yeah, so I guess I must have said a few of the right things, and he kind of liked what I had to say, and was talking to Jen as well, and she also kind of somehow I don't know if I had charm or something. I don't know what the hell I did, but I did something right.
I was gonna say, sometimes you just don't know. The universe says, you know what, you were in the right place, right time. You
Right
said
place, right
yes.
time.
Could you imagine if you never approached him? If you just
Right.
didn't come up, if you were,
Or if I just didn't go to the
intimidated on that
conference at
end.
all,
Yeah.
And so that's one of those things that I started to recognize, is that if you don't put yourself out there, these opportunities aren't going to come knock on your door for you.
Nope.
Like, you have to go out and do something to find these opportunities. And I wasn't going there with the intention of, hey, I want to be a fellow for the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation. Like, that was not my intention at all. Then they approached me, and they offered me that position, and it was like, in the back of my head at first, I was like, why me? Like, of all the people, like, there were thousands of people there, and like, you could ask anybody. And but then I was like, you know what? Why not me? I served. I was in combat. I was in Afghanistan. I served in the Global War on Terrorism. Lost a brother there. I'm doing work to try to help other people who were in the the post 9/11 era, if you will, and all the issues that we're dealing with, whether it's the burn pits or the PTSD or all these other issues that people are dealing with. I want to be there for those people too. So, and if I can use the platform that I've built through the podcast and social media presence and all these things, and I can put myself out there, and I can raise awareness coming on podcasts like this and raise awareness for the foundation, I think that would be, that would be a great thing. And so, the memorial is going to be built. It's going to be a memorial, just like kind of similar to, some of the other memorials that you might see in DC. There's no design yet, so I don't know what it's going to look like. So I can't say it's going to be, a carbon copy of, something, but I have no idea what it looks like yet. So, that's still, I don't think anyone does at this point. It's still in the design phase.
The last time I knew, they had a design team working on it right now, and they were working on the approval of certain things. So I mean, I get it. It's a process.
It is a big process.
Even to get the land there, because is that one of the ones that's going to be on the National Mall?
It is. Yeah, it's going to be.
Okay.
It's going to be positioned, if you're familiar with the area, kind of near the Lincoln Memorial and the Vietnam Memorial, kind of in the middle-ish of those two areas there. So there's a plot of land there that has kind of been designated for this memorial, and so whatever it ends up becoming will end up going there. And so that was a huge hurdle. as I got to learn more about it, the legislative thing was kind of a huge hurdle, but they got through that, they powered through it, and now it's like we were saying, the design phase, and obviously raising money for it, because it's not taxpayer funded. It's donations and things like that, and so these things aren't cheap, and getting the funding for that is super important. So I do want to, if you'll allow it, give a little plug for them, and let people know that they can go to the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation. You go to their website, the GWATmemorialfoundation.org, and they have donation links on the website there. And you can also find out obviously more about the memorial and where it's going to be. But the thing for me that really did it for me as far as this memorial and like why I wanted to be involved with it is I had been in D.C. a few years ago. My family actually got invited to the White House by President Trump during his first term. He had a Gold Star family event every Memorial Day during his first 4 years, and he invited 50 families, and they, just kind of like rolled out the red carpet for us. Honestly, it was like you had, anything you wanted, they took care of you there, and it was pretty amazing. But like that morning or the day before, I forget, I went for a run around the mall, and I was looking at all the memorials. I stopped at, Vietnam, Korea, World War II, and all these memorials that were around there. And I remember thinking to myself, like, where the hell is ours? This war's been going on long enough. Someone probably would have thought of it by now. Little did I know, it was already in the works, probably about 4 years in the works. Rod had been working tirelessly to push this forward, and it already was in the works. And when I found out about it and I learned about it, I kind of like went back to that moment of like, yes, someone actually is doing something, because like my grandfather, he fought in World War II, and the World War II memorial was built years after he died.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's not wait until our generation's gone. I mean, we've already waited over 20 years at this point since the war started. Let's get this thing going. And so that's exactly what they're doing, and I'm super blessed to be a part of it.
Oh, and of course it's okay to put a shout out there. I'm actually I'll grab all the information from you and put that down in the description links and stuff for the visitors, as well as probably tag them in there, because I mean that's again, I mean, I fought in the Global War on Terror as well, and you're not wrong. I've run the National Mall. I actually was part of a reserve unit after I left active duty that was right outside of DC. So we ended up getting plugged for a funeral detail. And it's basically, hey, stand by for any high profile funerals that come through. So it was kind of a freebie 2 weeks. Almost never got called up.
Sure.
So I was like, hey, make sure we're going to train every morning, but we're still doing PT. We're still doing stuff. I'll release you early. But one of the days I was like, hey, why don't we take the guys down to DC, downtown, and run the memorial as PT that morning, and kind of do maybe a mini history lesson in between, or stop, whatever the guys feel like doing. But you're right. You have all this history and stuff, but where was anything for the Global War on Terror? So that's really cool to hear, and to see. And I've been watching their stuff, and to watch it progress and see the milestones they've hit. And it's awesome to see other veterans out there taking that charge and using their passion to make this sort of thing happen. Because you're right. Nobody's going to save you. You gotta get in there, get your hands dirty, and do it yourself. But I feel like it's efforts of guys like you doing that and having that steadfast, that passion, but also the discipline to sit down and make things happen. And, coming up on, like you were saying before, coming up on 500 episodes, it just embodies it right there, because it's not an easy task, and it's not an easy task that they're doing, but it's a necessary one. So, I mean, I applaud their efforts as well as yours for everything you're doing, man.
Appreciate it.
Where can people find your podcast? Like, what's the primary platform to drop on to listen to the Drive On podcast? Yeah,
so the website is driveonpodcast.com, and you can go check out all the past episodes and all that kind of stuff there. honestly, anywhere that you're listening to podcasts, you can check it out. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube Music, or wherever the kids are listening to stuff these days, you can find it. But if you prefer the video version, the video is on YouTube, and I put it on X as well.
Okay.
And if you're into that, that's cool. That's where you can find those. Also, I think Spotify also has some of the videos as well.
They've started.
I'm starting to do that. So the older episodes, you won't find the videos, but the newer, within the last maybe 4 or 5 months or so, you probably start finding some of the videos there. So, so you can check that out there. But yeah, search for Drive On and
drive on.
Drive on, yeah, exactly.
And drive on.
Yeah.
No, absolutely, and that's great that you have a website. I would actually tell people to go there for, multiple reasons too. Like if you run a, like a newsletter or something, or site updates. But then again, too, is you're looking at it and you're getting. And I'm not saying that this would happen, but then again, I've seen stranger things happen to where, you're getting the official. You go to the .com and you have the official link tree, and you're getting official links. Because I have seen people ghosted, like they ghost an account, they take an account and they make it look to appear to be the other one, and they're out there running anything from asking people for money or anything like that. And I know. That is not you. That's not the character of Mr. Scott DeLuzio, because you're an upstanding guy.
And the other thing too is just like along those lines is owning your platform. I think is a huge thing, and which is why I wanted to have the website, because I know, like, maybe I start talking about a topic and Apple is like, hey, you know what? We don't agree with this topic, and your podcast is gone. Boom! All of a sudden, you've lost a portion of your audience because they were subscribed on that, right? And this actually happened, not because of any content that I did, but I didn't realize this, but Samsung had their own podcast app, Samsung Podcasts, and for some reason, it was my show was pretty popular with users of that app. Well, Samsung decided to get rid of that app, and with it went all those followers. And I was looking at my numbers, and I was like, where the hell did these people go? And I was like, I didn't change anything. Like, the format's not really crazy different. I mean, did I say something? Did I have a guest that was like, I don't know, what freaking Nazi or something that wanted to come? And people were like, I'm not down with this guy. I was like, no, like, none of my guests were crazy or anything. And I didn't think I did anything wrong. And I look at the numbers, and a huge chunk was from that Samsung podcast, and they went away. And so it made me realize, like, if I don't own my audience, then somebody else owns it, and they could do whatever they want with it. They could make it disappear overnight. If Apple Podcasts for some reason decided to just shut down overnight, we'd all be screwed as far as podcasters go. That's a huge platform. Same thing with Spotify and other platforms like that. So what I'm trying to do now is, through my website, like you were mentioning, a mailing list, like get people to subscribe there, and then even in an apocalyptic scenario where all the podcaster platforms go away, I still got my website, and you can still listen to an episode on my website. I'll send you an email when a new episode comes out, so you don't even have to think about it. It'll just show up in your inbox.
And it's crazy to think about, but I've seen it happen with some of the other shows out there, to where they were, I think, YouTube at one point, and I think it was really prevalent during the COVID days, to where if anybody said certain things, but then all of a sudden information changes later, and they're like, oh, we're sorry, like, come back, and it's why. And so it is something to be aware of. So for anybody out there who's listening, who's thinking about a podcast, or someone who has one, keep your backups, have multiple platforms. Your RSS feed does not save you.
No, exactly. So that's what I basically came down to. I was like, I want to make sure that I own all of this, and I'm not relying on any other platform to even to house my content. Like, I have backups of my content too. So if, God forbid, something happened, I have all of that content, and I can republish it someplace else if I need to. But
That is a big server.
it is, and it's growing. It's not slowing down, unfortunately, but it's good. It's all good.
I guess before we go here, I wanted to at least ask you: do you have any advice for anyone who actually is like either getting started running a podcast or is like questioning the stuff behind it? Because I know that everything has like those points. You know, I've hit a few of them already to where it's like, what are you doing? You need to come back and regroup and re-hit this thing like after you figure it out. What moments could you point at?
I am very big on processes, and so I want to make sure that my processes are good, that I'm not doing things that I don't need to be doing, and wasting my time doing things with editing. You know, I try to streamline some of the editing process and make it so that I'm not doing things that aren't adding value to the end user. If I'm adding flashy graphics and things like that, and the end user doesn't care about that, then I don't want to do it. So I think about who's my target audience first off, and I actually put a name to the person, and I created a backstory for this person. This person, you know, they're married with kids, they live in Texas, they have this, that, and I went through the whole thing. This is the person that every episode from the time that I did this, that's who I'm talking to for this episode. And I created this, and if I'm doing things that person doesn't care about, then I'm wasting my time, and I don't want to do that. And I know that this person just represents a group of people that are similar to him, but that's what I did. I created this listener avatar, I call it, and it's just a persona that I'm talking to. And then I look at those processes that I'm doing, the things that I think actually are adding value to that end listener. And if there's anything that I do more than once, I want to figure out a way that I can automate it and make it so that I don't have to do those same things. Sending an email to a guest, if the email is going to be the same every single time, figure out a way to automate it. And if I was to sit here and write 500 emails, because I'm nearing that many episodes, 500 emails, that takes a long time. And I know, sure, yeah, it's spread out over 6 years, but it's still a lot of time and effort and energy that I'm putting into it that I don't need to. The end user maybe I do need to communicate, because I need, you know, if I have a guest, I need to send them a link to say, this is where we're recording. I have to send that to them. If they don't get that, then they don't know where to go, and I don't end up recording. So in a way, that's valuable to my user. But the action of me writing that email to that user is not valuable. It serves no purpose. That person doesn't care that I wrote it. They just care that the guest gets a link to join me to record the interview. That's the only thing that actually adds any value. And so why am I wasting my time doing that if I can automate that? And so I go through all of these processes, and I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I try to take myself out of all of these processes. If they are processes that need to be done, if they're not, get rid of them and don't do them at all. So
I think that's where the beauty of where AI goes with things on how you can do that and create macro lists and, hey, if this, then that,
Yep.
you know, kind of.
Yeah. And it's not, I mean, it's not even all AI. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I do use AI for some of the stuff that I do, but there's a tool that I use. It's incredibly powerful. It's called Zapier. And it will connect all these different platforms that I use, from my scheduling calendar to my email to my recording platform to I have a checklist that I use to make sure I've done everything that I'm supposed to do for every episode. It connects to all of those things, and for every episode, for every guest that I have, it creates a whole workflow, and it just goes through it of all these things that I otherwise would have to do. Likely I'd forget to do most of it, and it just does it for me, and I don't have to do it. And so it seems like it's kind of backwards, because I do spend a lot of time working on those systems to make sure that they're working. But once they work, I can just they're on autopilot, and I don't have to think about them anymore. And it frees up mental space for me, so I don't have to do things anymore that I'm not I'm personally not adding value. They're valuable to have done, but I'm not adding value to that equation. So why am I wasting my time doing it when I can? Yeah, sure, it costs a little money to have a platform like that, but how much time is how much is my time worth? And
Everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Time is everything,
and it's very limited. I can make more money. I can get a job and work and make money. I can't make more time. And so if I can buy something for, yeah, sure, maybe it's a couple $100 for a year or whatever. Like, okay, I'll buy it, and it saves me a crap ton of time that now I can do stuff with my kids. I can do stuff with my family, and I don't have to think about that stuff. It just works, you know?
Exactly.
So that's my advice. That's figure that stuff out.
Large initial investment, like, you know, whether it be, you know, the time to set something like that up.
Yeah.
But then, like you were saying, production teams be damned, because if you can personally do the job of 4 people,
a production team's a whole lot more expensive than that, you know? So.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah. I was talking with somebody the other day about, you know, I'm like, hey, if I were to offload this to a team, you know, and they gave me some numbers, and I was like, it's something to aspire to in the future, brother.
Yeah, right. Right.
Look, Scott, it's been great talking, man. Hey, hang tight for a minute. I want to talk to you afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was great having you. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, you bet. It's been a blast. I really had a good time and enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, thanks, man. Same. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Veteran Success Story. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you want to know more about Scott DeLuzio, I'm going to leave stuff in the description links, and you can also check out his podcast, Drive On multiple platforms out there. So go and check him out. Please follow and subscribe for more episodes of Veteran Success Story. And if you found the content here useful, or it touched you in some way, share it with someone else. Be like, hey, have you checked out this show? It's not for everybody, but honestly, I try to vary this enough within the different guests that I have on to where there is something for anybody at any given time out there. A lot of this stuff and meeting these people, it's helped me. It's helped listening to some of their content on the other side, in the case of Scott and some of the other guests that I've had on. And I really think that it's through together and through our community as a whole. It takes all of us to make this a better space for everyone, and to, you know, continually keep improving. So follow and subscribe. Let somebody else know about the show. And until next week, this has been yet another episode of Veteran Success Story.